All right, so we have a pretty stable number, it seems, right now. If more people come, they're also welcome. And we'll hope let's start maybe by getting everyone in the chat. If you could say your name and what organization you're coming from. Okay, CII, MAOF.
We have Plaza and VOA, Norwalk.
Uh-huh. Some LACO representation. Awesome. Okay, I'll get started sharing my screen.
Am I good to jump in, Katie? All right. Well, welcome everybody. We're so glad that you're able to join us today. We are now ready to launch our demonstration project, and we've been talking about it through our last year's job embedded professional development and plans that we developed with you. And we spent some of our summer months trying to make this as an efficient process for you. So that as we start, I do want to share that we've had some lessons learned. We've already completed 4 previous demonstration projects, and so we get to glean from the lessons learned from the last round. And so welcome to the opportunity. It's going to be a fun project. It's going to be a learning project, and we're just hoping that children in your classrooms and the demonstration classrooms really get to enjoy the experience of having these materials, and that your teachers also enjoy the learning that's going to happen through the selection and the implementation of the materials. And also administrators, if I can give you a brief background on the project. The project is funded by the California Department of Education through our Inclusive Early Education Expansion Program. And what the thought is for the projects is that if we build the capacity of administrators, of coaches, of supervisors to understand what an inclusive environment looks like, what materials can be selected, how furniture can be placed to enable children of different abilities to gain access. And it came with materials that we got to touch, that we got to put in those classrooms. If it came with conversations with consultants, then we would build the capacity of organizations to henceforth develop classrooms similar to that. So when we get new funding opportunities, so when we get one-time supplemental, or when we're opening up a new center, then those are some of the considerations that you're having as you design new classrooms. So the project comes with about $45,000 to $50,000 worth of materials that you will be selecting along with your LACO consultants. It's definitely a mutual process where we're going to be doing the selection. And we are here to present to you first of all, how we're going to design it, some timelines. I'm going to go over some logistics of the project. We've worked with LACO's procurement department. As you guys may be familiar with moving monies from LACO, it can be tedious, and it could be tedious to get you the monies. And so I have assumed the purchasing of the materials to get it to you expediently. We've been working with vendors for several months to talk about what delivery would look like at your sites. And we've talked with our procurement department because, to give you some background, when LACO makes purchases, it goes to a procurement department, then it's delivered to the procurement department, then they check to see that everything was delivered, and then they call the Head Start division, and then they deliver it to us, and then we have to figure out how to get it to our delegate agencies. So I've cut some of those processes out to make sure that we can get it to you expediently, to get it to your sites directly rather than having these little stops at LACO. But with it comes some commitments from the delegate agencies who are choosing to endeavor into the demonstration projects. And so because we've eliminated some processes, we want to get it to you as soon as possible. We don't want you to have to wait for monies and then figure out who's going to do the purchasing and delivery. We're taking care of that, but it does require some commitments, some agreements, and some responses for you. So today we are planning to kind of give you an overview of what that will look like for you. And then lastly, we're going to talk to you about our approach. What is the lens that the disabilities consultants are coming into your classrooms? Like what are their considerations as they endeavor in that? And so with that, I will leave the next slide to Janelle, who will look over for us who will be the team for the delegate agencies.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. I'm Janelle Paquel. I think most of you are familiar with me. I'm on this team. So as you can see on the site, there's quite a few, or on the slide, there's quite a few of us that are a part of this demonstration classroom team. And those are probably the individuals who are here with us today. So this really is a collaborative approach, as Hazel mentioned. This is really a capacity building. So we involve multiple entities in order to be able to really build that capacity. So you see here, we do ask that the disabilities and coordinator manager be involved. And throughout today's presentation, more clarification will be mentioned about some of these. The site supervisor or whoever will be supervising or supporting the receiving of the materials is really that position. They may have a different title, and that's okay. But we're really looking at the person who's over the site and not the direct teachers who would be helping receive the orders that are coming in, and then also support and placement of materials into the classroom. We also want to collaborate with the education coordinator or manager, making sure the environments are set up well, that there's coordination between the different entities, and making sure that it's a smooth flow, as well as being able to support the teachers. We're always going to be available, but if there's any like a quick question that the education manager could ask or answer for them, as well as a disability coordinator, it's more beneficial. Also a DA mentor or coach. So again, if we're really looking at that capacity building, so anybody that would be supporting this classroom and other classrooms. So maybe the materials or the usage or the ideas or the layout that's working really well in this classroom could be passed on to other classrooms. So again, if the mentor or coach could be involved, that's always a benefit. Your Inclusive ECE IAP rep, so us on the call today, will be guiding you and supporting of the selection of materials, why to select certain materials. We're open to the idea. We're not saying which materials you have to order, but we're here to help guide that process and then facilitate the backside of all of the ordering and things. And then also the IAP team. And we ask too at the delegate agencies, if there's any other person that will have a hands or eyes on this classroom that was designated for this, please invite them as well. So the IAP, really looking at anybody else who can help, or if we know that you would be really interested in something with the health team, or getting something that would be beneficial that way, we're happy to have them as part of this too. So we're really just showing that it's more of a collaborative process, as well as some of these are really essential for this project to continue to move forward. Next slide. So the demo site or classroom basics. So as Hazel mentioned, there's about a $45,000 allotted amount per classroom. We do want to take into consideration or take into understanding that 10% of that should be off the top for the additional shipping and taxes. So to make that consideration, as well as for the demo classroom, it's for materials both indoor and outdoor. So we're looking at also the outdoor space, or even the bathroom space or the walkway space. We're really looking at a variety of the areas that classroom and those children are going to be engaging with. However, there are some restrictions. The restrictions are really coming from the state and the grant telling us what we can and can't spend our money on. So we're not going to be ordering any consumables unless they are consumables that can be justified. So we wouldn't be necessarily maybe ordering just construction paper. That's a consumable that really doesn't, maybe, unless we can think of something promote inclusivity or access. However, we could purchase like consumable sand, because sand could be a sensory experience, or egg-shaped crayons or triangular crayons. Those, although they are consumable, they do enhance the environment. No installation will be conducted. So I did say that we are looking at multiple areas within the environment, outdoor and indoor, but we're not doing any major renovations or installations. Really, the installations is going to be at minimum, or at the most will be maybe some wall panels that we've installed in some of our classrooms, but it's a very basic install that facilities or a custodian would be able to do. We want to make sure that we are increasing accessibility and inclusive learning environments. So we're looking at materials, toys, like I said, maybe sensory pathways, all the different areas. And if there's any questions that come up about what can and can't be ordered, your IAP representative will be able to support and help us understand what those items could or could not be.
Okay, so next we wanted to talk to you a little bit about the demo classroom team. Janelle mentioned some of the participants or roles that can be added. For certain, we want the education manager and the disability manager to be at the table because you would both have an understanding of what the implementation of the materials would look like in those classrooms. So those are the key team members that will be participating. We also want to really emphasize the request for timely communication. And just to give you some background, I told you that I have worked with the procurement team to release the materials and have them delivered directly to your sites. But with that comes some responsibility that we need to confirm that all the materials were received on the delegate agency side. And so part of the agreement for the demonstration project is that you will give us timely communication within 3 business days that it was received and that you've reconciled the shipping list with what was actually in the boxes that were there. We will need you to communicate with us timely if it's not there. Just some lessons that were learned. Sometimes we've had materials that were delivered that were damaged, and unless we know about it, then we can't fix it. We can't hold our vendors accountable to it. So in one situation, we had a damaged product that was delivered, and we didn't understand until 2 to 3 months after delivery. It's great that we had a strong enough relationship with our vendor, but they had already been paid for it without really rectifying it. And so we need your demo classroom team to understand that the project comes with frequent and ongoing communication with the LACO team. Magdalena is our team's admin support, and you will become familiar with her, but she will be emailing you ahead of time. Hey, Lakeshore is delivering this week. Please anticipate delivery within 5 days. Please communicate with us after 3 days after receipt and so forth. And so your IAP rep and our admin support team will be communicating with you, and we do need a response. I do want to say that we understand that when materials are delivered, sometimes you don't have the manpower to immediately place it into the classroom, right? We've come upon not having space to hold the materials that are being delivered. And so if you anticipate that, that's part of the timely communication that we need to know. I'll give you an example. We had one delegate agency who did a demo site, and they didn't have the space to hold it. And things began to be delivered, and we had to put a halt. We had to call all the vendors and say, nope, this needs to be more strategic, and we need to understand when the deliveries are going to happen. We were able to work with a vendor who did white glove delivery, and we've talked to them to really be able to coordinate what that's going to look like. Another example is we understand that setting up a classroom can't happen when kids are on the site, right? And so we know that the ideal time most of the time is a long weekend, the winter break, the spring break, when you can finally unbox everything and really strategically place some materials in that classroom. And so we need to understand the parameters of what you're working with and what you're projecting so that we can also schedule delivery and help problem solve. And if it's at a later time, then we're going to ask you, do you have storage space? And if it's storage space is far, how is it going to get there eventually? So we are here to problem solve, but that really means that we need to hear your planning for that. Because we know that the materials can't always be placed immediately upon receipt, we also have some timelines that we've established to understand what your plan is for really incorporating it into the classroom. We've had some demonstration sites that the materials sat in a warehouse for about a year before it got into the classrooms. And so we also need to close the projects. And so we've defined some timeframes for really planning when we're going to get it into those classrooms, not only because we need to report to our funder that the project was completed, but because we also need to validate and see that the project is moving forward and that the materials are being placed into use. And so your IAP rep is going to help you plan for that. We can modify, we can be flexible, but we do need to have that communication to alert us of some of the barriers or challenges that you are coming upon. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Oh, the last, I'm so sorry. The last thing on this.
There is a question.
Oh, okay. If a teacher needs to come in on a Sunday for unboxing, does the grant cover their pay or is that up to the DA? So the funds do not cover substitute costs for setting up the classroom. What we have seen, it's usually a group effort, including managers and site supervisors who set up the classroom, but the simple answer is no, we do not cover overtime pay for staff to set up. The last thing on this slide before I move on to the next one, you see that we have included the statement inventory processes. Just to alert you that the materials that are purchased for CSPP or CCTR funded classrooms. Those are state funds. This is a state grant. When we hit a threshold of $500, it requires what we call brown tagging. And so there's a label that's put on the materials, and we have to validate it annually that it remains in your possession and that is in the classroom for its intended purpose. So we will walk you through the agreement and the inventory processes, but those are some of the communications that you will be receiving from us and some of the commitments that you will be making as we release the materials to your classrooms. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay, so in terms of the timeline, we are starting off today. This is our third orientation meeting, just to give you a very brief overview. The next step is that your IAP rep and any other LACO consultant will come to the classroom and do a walkthrough observation with you in that classroom. Please don't be alerted. We're not there to monitor for these events. Truly, the lens of the participants for this walkthrough is just to look physically what is available in that classroom. Look at your strengths. Maybe you need more sensory materials. Maybe you need a different rug or remove the rugs. Maybe it's something different for the floor that'll enable access. It's truly a walkthrough, and we're also asking you as a delegate agency to do that same walkthrough. These walkthroughs become very important because in October, we have 3 meetings set aside where your full team, they need to attend one meeting. The full team needs to come to at least one of those, where we're going to have the consultation and the rich discussions of what we saw and what we think might be a need. And at that place, we have catalogs where you will be making a selection of those materials that will be placed in that classroom. After you select those materials, we're hoping that you would select all the materials on that day, but you will get about 5 days after to complete it. Then LACO will begin to place the orders. In order to place our own workflow, we're going to be doing 3 of the orders at a time. So then our team will begin to coordinate with the recipients, the dates of delivery and so forth. And so we'll have a better idea as to what 3 organizations will go first as we receive the completed list. Once that happens, you will receive it. You will be alerting us of when it was delivered and if it was complete. And then you as a team will set up and organize those materials. It could be the administrator, the coach, the teacher is usually involved in that process. And after that, our team will help you with your tagging and any questions you might have. They'll get those tags out to you to finalize the project. And then we'll have a final meeting with your IAP rep to discuss with you any lingering questions. If you have questions about the use of materials, the team can train the teachers, it can train the coach. Anybody who wants to be informed about how the actual implementation of those materials looks like in the classroom will have the opportunity to get consultation on that. All right, and then the next slide. We will be asking you to identify a project lead. We do ask you to consider who that person is because that will be the person who's receiving the communication from LACO about delivery. So that person should have access to see what the boxes are holding, whether it was delivered. We do ask that that person be a manager level lead because you're validating the receipt of the materials. Okay, so you have some time to discuss that and to identify who the primary contact is going to be. All right. When we begin to schedule the deliveries, our procurement department will place the orders and we will be forwarding you the POs per vendor. So once those are placed, you're going to have the complete list that comes from Lakeshore, East Special Needs, perhaps from Kaplan, depending what materials you selected. So you will have the overall list of materials that will be ordered for you. Once the vendor receives that and they're ready to begin to ship, again, you will be alerted that it's coming to you probably within 5 days, 7 days. You will be given those dates of anticipated delivery. If any item is missing again, then you need to alert LACO within those 3 days so that we can make your orders whole, that we're holding the vendors accountable, and then that we're not issuing payment for items that were not received. We will need for those items that are above $500, we need a manager to review all the orders, and then we will need a director to sign off on any items that were inventoried, which means that they met the threshold of 500 and above. So you will be receiving communication from our secretary, our admin support, and the IAP rep as those processes move forward. Okay. When you receive those, the materials, they should be placed in the identified classroom. Again, this is a state-funded project, so it needs to go into the classroom that it was designated for. If you have any questions about designing the classroom, you can connect with the disabilities consultant or the inclusive ECE rep that's assigned to you. If any materials will not be used immediately upon delivery, you must be able to identify where you're going to have the storage for that so that we understand that it's purposed and that your team also understands that as well. We know that sometimes there's a warehouse of materials and eventually it goes out into the classrooms. We just need to have clarification and confirmation that wherever you store it, it will eventually end up in the right classroom.
All right, for material support, so it kind of has already been mentioned, but we just want to make it clear that the disability consultants and your IAP rep will return to the classroom once the materials have been placed that were provided to the classroom. We can always come sooner. As mentioned, we can help you with the placement of materials or unboxing and placement of the materials. But once they are in, we do want to come back out to observe the classroom. And really the purpose of that is being able to make sure we understand that a lot of us know how to use a lot of different materials, but sometimes the teaching staff and in the classroom maybe just don't know what they don't know. So maybe we see another use of a material that was purchased, or maybe we see in one of the last ones, we purchased some sound baffling clouds that just look like big felt clouds. And the teachers we're like, oh, did you guys receive this? And they said, yeah. And we're like, where are they? And they're like, oh, we don't know what they're for. And so sometimes they just don't know what all the materials were purchased for the reason. And then also we could also maybe identify different times of the day or different ways to use materials. So we just want to make sure that we go back into the classroom and observe the classroom with the teachers and the children in the classroom to make sure that they're really being used to the best of how they are intended. And then, as Hazel had mentioned, there is a final meeting that will take place with the demo classroom team about implementation and generalization. So although we are very focused on one specific classroom during this process, it's really that capacity building, and not only for the teachers, but for the team to be able to generalize how to use these practices and materials across multiple classrooms. At your delegate agency, either maybe you have the materials already, or when money becomes or funds become available, that could be something that's offered to other classrooms when we see that it's working really well for certain children in other classrooms. So we will have a final meeting to make sure everything is good to go, all questions are answered, and then really to understand how we hope that this information starts to trickle down to the other classrooms within the delegate agency. At this time, before we move forward, I want to take a brief moment to see if there are any questions about the information that's already been presented. Maybe about the timelines or materials or next steps. Any questions? All right. And I think Hazel mentioned it, but the
I'm
timeline
sorry.
really, oh, go ahead.
So the visits, is this going to be a one-time visit or ongoing to
So
provide that support?
right. So the first initial walkthrough is going to happen in the next few weeks before October, which is the one that we just really look to see what the classroom currently has in areas. As far as once the materials are in the classroom, it can be as what's needed. So at least at minimum, there will be a one-time observation. But if at that point there are questions or need for further observations or support or coaching around any of the materials, that will continue to happen until capacity is built and people are confident in using the materials within the classroom.
Thank you. And I'm assuming that these materials will find their ways into the agency's inventories.
Yes, so that was the brown tagging process that Hazel mentioned.
Okay.
So if
Okay.
anything is under $500, a single item, it will not be brown tagged or put into the inventory, but anything that is one item over, any items that are over $500 will be part of the delegate agency inventory. We'll come in and do the brown tagging and the signatures and all of that stuff.
Is it gonna depend upon how much materials plus classroom the need based on your observation or based on a walkthrough?
So is your question is based on the walkthroughs dependent on what materials they receive?
Yeah, the classroom that we're gonna be observing, we're gonna observe how much materials it's needed up to our observation, correct?
Yes. So every classroom has the opportunity to have the 45,000. If you choose not to, like say if you feel you have everything and you're at 30,000, then that's fine. So the purpose of the walkthrough, which will be discussed later too, is really just to see what currently the classroom has, what areas could they potentially benefit from. And then after the walkthrough, we'll share our thoughts. We'll hear what you guys think you guys need and want. And then that's where we'll start to begin to purchase based on what we see and what you guys share with us that the classroom needs, both indoor, outdoor, bathrooms, walkways, wherever that classroom travels.
Thank you.
Yes. Any other questions around the process so far? And with the timeline, I know it's come up, Hazel did share, it kind of goes in stages, but the goal is to have all of this done by the end of the program year. So some classrooms may get done a little bit earlier, some may get done a little bit later, but the idea is that all classrooms will have all their materials by the end of the program year, and hopefully a majority of them will be in the classroom ready to go. All right. All right, now Katie's going to take us through kind of the methodology of how we're going to begin to select and decide what to purchase.
Exactly. So, hi everyone. If we haven't met already, or if we've only met over email, my name's Katie. I'm one of the disability consultants. I'm an occupational therapist by training, and I'm excited to be part of the Demo Classroom project. So, most of this that I share is going to be review forever for everyone here, but just wanted to emphasize where we're coming from when we're going through the classrooms and observing and recommending or suggesting materials. So it's for inclusion, and inclusion is not just the act of doing certain things, it's also beliefs. So it's the belief that every child has a right to belong, form positive social relationships, learn and develop. So this does include both children with and without disabilities. All of our classrooms have that inclusion model. So you could see in this image on the left, they're not on the outside, or they're not in the inside, but in their own little area. Children with disabilities, we want and to foster and support their belonging and inclusion in that classroom, and their ability to participate like all the other students that we have. We'll start with universal design. So most of us may have heard of universal design for learning. It stems in basic universal design, and that is this idea of design for all. It's actually very architectural. So we know some things in our day-to-day lives. We know ramps, we know automatic doors, we know touchless soap dispensers and things like that. All of these are examples of universal design in which they're usable by all, but particularly helpful to someone with a disability or someone with different needs. So there are 7 principles related to universal design. We won't go into them now, but I wanted to highlight a few. One is flexibility of use, so options for the way that something can be used. Universal design also encompasses simplicity. Something has a very clear purpose, but it's very simple to figure out. It's not overly complex. What I think is particularly notable about universal design is this equitable use. So that means providing the same means of usage for everyone to avoid segregation or stigmatization. So I use the example, there's ADA compliance, and there's accessibility features where every building needs a ramp or maybe a way to enter without stairs. But sometimes those entrances are all the way in the back of the building. So for someone with a disability, having to go in the very back of the building is what we would consider stigmatizing or potentially contributing to segregation. So by providing those options for all in the beginning, and something such as a ramp, someone with a wheelchair can use that ramp, someone with a stroller can use that ramp, and someone who's also able to walk and enter via that way can still use this ramp. So that is this idea of universal design. It emphasizes and explains that the barrier is in the design and the environment. So it's not necessarily that person, right? It's design that's usable by all people to the greatest extent possible without the need for adaptation or specialized design. We acknowledge that, and especially as an occupational therapist, sometimes you totally need an adaptation, and that's okay, but we can plan for variability. We could plan for people's different abilities, and knowing that, we could create equitable environments for all. Here's some examples, like I mentioned, closed captioning you may be familiar with. There's those automatic doors, touchless hand dryer, and then levers. Door levers are actually considered universal design as compared to a knob based on the gripping features and the force required. Here we have a faucet, and then also grab bars, even something like that. And it's not hindering anyone who doesn't need it, but it's only supporting those who may. So thank you for that.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'll pick it up from here. Are you able to hear me? Yes, okay, good. I couldn't hear my feedback, so I wasn't sure. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Eva Gutierrez, and I'm with the Inclusive ECE team, and I'll talk a little bit, building on what Katie has already shared in terms of the physical environments of universal design. Now I will share a little bit on universal design for learning. So again, continuing with what Katie has already introduced us to, we start off by looking at that the barriers do not exist in the learner, but that they actually exist in the design, right? So not today, but in the future, you will have an opportunity to look at some of the materials that have been selected as universally designed materials to support all learners, taking into account that that some individuals may need additional supports. We'll also look at learner variability. And here we're really looking at that we all take in and receive information differently, and kind of having that assumption, we can then again begin to plan as to how to introduce materials using those multiple means of representation and engagement. And then the goal of UDL is really to build on autonomy and choice of learners, so really supporting learner agency. Go to the next slide. So here, again, not today, but in the future, you will have an opportunity to select some materials for your classrooms. And what we want you to consider is how is the material being presented or represented? How is the content being delivered? And what is within our learning environments that could support all learners, taking into consideration that that individuals take information differently, and then how learning is being demonstrated across different learners. And our last slide is the UDL guidelines, and this one just kind of goes over those big three buckets or big tenets of UDL, which is providing multiple means of engagement, multiple means of representation, and then multiple means of actions and expressions. And I will turn it back to Karina now.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? We're all checking our volume here, but I'm Dr. Karina Gredano. I'm also a disabilities consultant here with the Inclusive ECE team. So I'm going to go over just like adaptations and individualization, right? Keeping the individual child in mind. But our programs, I feel, yes, we do keep the individual child in mind, but we also keep all our children in mind, right? So what we're talking about here with these universal designs is that we're talking about it, as the word said, it's the universality of being able to use those designs to assist all children. Like Katie was mentioning, you know, the hands-free soap, the hands-free, you know, sometimes some of those things are a little bit hard to use for me sometimes because they don't like get my motion. But those have become much easier for all of us to use, right? Having those ramps, especially if we have those days where, you know, we just can't do the stairs. So certain things like that can help all of us and will definitely help all our children. Next slide, please, Katie. So here, when we talk about adaptations, we're talking about what we can do to meet the needs of all children and allow equal access to education, right? So what can we do to improve that? Something that could have been done for me to improve my education when I entered school was the use of left-handed scissors. Unfortunately, I don't know if it was just, you know, I kept telling them I was left-handed. They kept giving me right-handed scissors. So it was great. I learned how to cut with my right eventually. It did hurt when I would use the right-handed scissors on my left hand. I don't know why there was not a conversation about this, but it was an issue for me, you know, growing up at first, being exposed to scissors, that I was having a hard time using it with my left hand because they weren't meant for me to be used there. So I did learn the skill of using my right hand. So now I can definitely hone on both my right and my left hand skills and become ambidextrous, you know? So that eventually came out for me, but we also want things to be available for our children and in our programs. So when we're talking about those adaptations, we're talking about accommodations. So making those changes to the classroom and to the environment and to our practices. But here, what we're talking about is how, right? So how a child learns. So we're making an adjustment to the how. And then when we're doing the modifications, we're making an adjustment to the what a child is learning, right? So we're taking these two concepts, and next slide, please. And we're definitely talking about what changes we can do to the environment. And that's what you want to keep in mind when you're walking through your classrooms and doing those observations of what it is that you need and what it is that we can definitely look at, right? So some example of child barriers and areas of need, we all know that may be visual, physical, cognitive, sensory regulation, or emotional regulation. So we definitely want to have different items, different things that we can definitely look into and help the children access our environments and access our curriculum. So one thing that teachers can look at or change is the presentation, right? So how are the children receiving that information? And you can do it both visually, auditorily, having different visuals, having different types of print, maybe using pictures for story time instead of letters, that spoken oral stories. And then response. So how is the child demonstrating their learning? Are they responding to these changes? Are they actually being able to engage that? But also you want to think about is how have we taught our children to be able to respond to those changes, right? So have we taught them how to utilize the materials within our classroom? Have we taught them how to, be exposed to that routine in our classroom? Another thing we want to look at and teachers can look at is setting. So looking at the environment, right, in which the child is learning. So that's something we've been talking about a lot right now, the physical, right? What is it that we can help for them? We're not going to have the same chairs we have in Head Start that we have in early Head Start because our little ones are in different height levels, right, at that time. But we could have tables and chairs that are adjustable that you can definitely raise up or bring down. Timing and scheduling. So when is the learning taking place and for how long? Like I mentioned earlier, are we teaching our little ones how to use the materials that we have? Are we teaching them the routine? Are we really utilizing our instruments that we have within our classroom, and as we say, our tools, right? And then for how long? Are we having them learn this for more than 30 minutes? Are we going through it slowly? How many things are we introducing at once, right? So those things all connect together, and figuring out how we're learning, how we're teaching, how we're learning, and then how the children are demonstrating that learning and being able to be successful within our new environments, right? So next slide. So what is our goal, right? Really, our goal as a IEP team is to make sure that we are developing early childhood education programs and classrooms that are inclusive, and we are planning for all learners and all abilities, and to build their capacity for educators and administrators so we can adapt our environments and our teaching practices to use these materials to meet those needs, right? But we're also talking about how are we as leaders of our programs or part of our program, how are we all making sure that we're establishing an inclusive program, not just an inclusive classroom or an inclusive site? How are we establishing an inclusive program? Yes, we're very lucky that we're able to have these funds at this time. Unfortunately, we wish we had enough to be able to do an entire program at once. But this is setting us up to where you guys have the tools and you guys have the reference materials and the structure of how you can model, as our title says, our demonstration, right? Our model classrooms, and how we can model our current classrooms to the rest. So how are we going to generalize? How are we going to continue to provide this through our programs, right? So I'm going to hand it on over to Katie, Janelle.
Me.
Janelle. But before that, did you guys have any questions? I know I went through that pretty quickly. All right, if not, Janelle, go for it.
So now that you kind of understand maybe where we're coming from when trying to select materials or why we're looking at certain things within the classroom, we just wanted to share that we have done some demonstration sites. And so we just wanted to share some of our pictures from them, just to, again, get you guys start thinking about outside the box. Of course, there are very simple things that we can add that I think a lot of us are like, oh, yes, we can, have a sensory table or we can have this. But we also want to just share different pictures of what other people have done to hopefully start to ignite that excitement to start selecting some materials. So some of these will be both Head Start and early Head Start classrooms. So you can see here, we kind of built up one of their cozy or safe spaces with a variety of different materials. This other one, really, the classroom was quite small. So they really took advantage of installing some of those panels. They had fine motor latches and thing panel. They had a mirror with lights panel. They had a light table that was rechargeable, which they really appreciated because it didn't have to be connected to the wall at all times. And then in the other picture, you could see a different type of tactile wall and experience for the children to engage in. Something even as I think Hazel mentioned, like rugs, seeing the placement of rugs, helping to find different areas, soften surfaces, soften sounds is also another reason. Next slide. Here are some other ideas here. So this classroom, they had a different type of light table based on like their setup. We did some flexible or different seating for them. We provided not only the light table, the light seating, but also the manipulatives to go with the light table. This classroom also wanted a listening center. And I know that this isn't something that all typically use, but they had some specific reasons why they were interested in having the listening center. And it was on wheels, so it was portable, which made it nice because they would rotate it in and out of the classroom. So it wasn't necessarily in the classroom 100% of the time, but they did rotate it out with as they had for their reasons, being whether it was going with the study they were doing or when they needed it. But it was nice because it was on wheels, so it was easily movable, and they could adjust it to different areas of the classroom if needed, and they can really be flexible with moving it to different areas and even out of the classroom when needed. As I shared, we also do some outdoor spaces. So here, one of the classrooms, they really wanted to make sure that they had a safe space for outdoor time. So we looked at softening the cement, adding the little egg pod to have their own little space in there to kind of, give some of that, to decrease some of the sensory stimulation that could be occurring. The bean bags, some different types of chairs. But, as we said, we're really looking at both indoor and outdoor. You see the musical panel here. I was just in this classroom last week, and it was so fun to watch the kids play with the musical panel. It was definitely probably the most played item in that classroom when I observed it. And it really provided, not only did it provide that experience, but it also took things from that would typically be on a shelf or on the ground and put them on the wall to give more physical space and accessibility within the classroom so that they could enhance it in different ways or use the space in a different manner. And then here is a classroom. Those are the sound baffling clouds that we found. So those are to help reduce the sound in the classroom, the echoing. It was a very large room. You can also see in the back, there's like the leaf seatings, there's easels, timers, different types of things. Again, these may be things that maybe the classroom already has, and we're not going to purchase more and more of what the classroom has, but other ways to think about what items could be used in the classroom is kind of the purpose of these example pictures. And then lastly, I know I've already touched on it, but I just want to review it as it is our next step. So our next step after today is your IAP representative who's been in contact with you is going to request that to do a walkthrough through that classroom. This walkthrough will be about an hour long. And as Hazel, I think, mentioned, it's very beneficial for us to have someone with us. So whether that's the disability or education or coach or whoever's going to kind of have a part in this, because we want to hear what you guys have in the storage, right? We may not see it, but you're like, oh no, we have it already. You don't need to order more of those. Also, we want to hear what you think could really be enhanced in the classroom, or what's working really well in the classroom so you don't need any additional, or what are you hoping to get out of this project. So it's really that collaborative process. This is also a time that if the teachers have a moment, we can maybe check in with them to see if there's anything that they have high on their priorities or interests. As stated, this is just truly a walkthrough. Please don't prepare for it. In fact, we don't want you to put things in the classroom that don't belong in the classroom, because we want to supplement where we need to supplement. This is not at all monitoring, so if you can please convey that with the teaching staff. We don't want them to be nervous. We're not looking at anything. We're not monitoring by any means. We're really truly just looking at the environment to see where we can use this money in the best way possible. When we're looking through, not only are we looking for types of items, we're also looking for quantity of items, variation of items. You may have a ton of crayons, but do you have different types of crayons, triangular crayons, egg-shaped crayons? Do you have different types of adjustable furniture? Do you have different types of equipment for outside, different size basketball hoops, different size things to do for them outside? So we're really looking again at really in a holistic view of the classroom, both inside the classroom, the shelving, the furniture, the type of furniture you have, the type of materials you have or don't have. Bathrooms. Some of our bathrooms are set up perfect for our little people, and other of our bathrooms are not set up for our children, right? They're set up for adults. So could we purchase a two-step stepping stool for them to reach things? Could we look at the hallways? The same site that had the panels, they had a panel up in front of the classroom so that when parents were doing check-in, the children had something to do while the teacher and the parent were doing their morning check-in. So there was something to, you know, kind of keep them a little bit more busy so that they could have a better conversation. And then it again offered some different experiences for them. So we'll look at hallways or transition places or spaces that may be occurring for where that classroom goes throughout their day. All right.
So next comes the walkthrough, then what's after that? Hopefully you've all heard by now from whatever team member that has contacted you about these things. We will be having that materials in-person selection session. It will be either, so the disability coordinator we ask is present, the education manager, and the site supervisor all together, either on October 13th, October 21st, or October 28th for the full day experience, where we'll have more of an opportunity to debrief what we saw at the walkthrough, figure out whose priorities are where, select some materials, and then figure out what we want to order. And if you attend October 13th, well, for all of these, we will provide a week to finalize lists and figure out if there's anything specifically that's we don't have on one of those lists, but would be of high interest to your classroom. There will be a week to finalize that. So if you attend October 13th, we'd ask the group to have the list completed by October 20th. If you attend October 21st, we'd ask for the list to be complete by October 28th. And if you attend October 28th, we'd ask for the material list to be due November 4th. And what will we be doing there? Also, please come prepared with the delivery address of where the materials will be going, who we can expect to receive those materials, and that person's contact information. Because for the delivery of materials, like we said, there's a lot that goes into it. So we just want to make sure that there's a pinpointed person who we can discuss with if there's any changes or if something comes up or needs to be clarified. With that, we've finished the content of our orientation today, and we open it up for questions that anyone may have. No questions? We did that good of a job? Oh, yay, I'm glad you're excited, Monica. We are too. This is a really exciting project, and there's a lot of things we can do with this amount of money. So we'll be looking forward to doing it with all your agencies.
All right, well, thank you so much then. We will be working with your IAP representative to make sure that you guys have confirmed as a team the date that you will be coming in to select your materials and consultations. Shameless plug, we booked a full day for your planning, so you'll have rich conversations, and we've also planned meals for you. You'll have a breakfast and lunch offering as we sit down at the table to kind of have those conversations in the planning, okay? So I don't think that we have any questions then. We thank you for your